Hello and welcome to the Postgraduate Education webinar series by HVSI Eye Hospital, Pune. Today I'll be talking about evaluation of proptosis. Proptosis is an alluring subject for students and consultants alike. It is a vast topic. However, I'll be focusing on the key points and description of some of the definitions and classifications necessary to decode a case of proptosis.
Dr. Sonal Yadav is a trained ophthalmic plastic surgeon and an ocular oncologist. She has several publications to her credit, and recently she's published a book titled Surgical Ophthalmic Oncology, a collaborative open access reference. She has also received numerous national and international awards.
So globe displacement is the most common presenting sign of any orbital pathology. As we all know, orbit is a pyramidal structure. So any pathology happening in the orbit in the form of orbital tumors or disturbance leads to globe displacement. Proptosis is defined as an abnormal forward protrusion of the eyeball, which can present as both unilateral as well as bilateral. For unilateral, more than 2 mm of asymmetry between the two eyes. For bilateral, more than 21 mm of forward protrusion of both the eyes from the lateral orbital rim can be called as proptosis. Now, along with proptosis, let us throw some light on other terminologies which are used concurrently. The term exophthalmos has been used synonymously with proptosis previously. However, exophthalmos remains limited to the description of protrusion of eyeball following thyroid endocrinopathy. Enophthalmos. Enophthalmos means retrodisplacement of the eye globe into the orbital cavity, most probably resulting from inferior orbital wall fracture or atrophy of retrobulbar fat. Exorbitism. Exorbitism refers to shallow orbits or reduced orbital bony cavity volume containing normal orbital structures. So, as in proptosis, the volume of orbital content is increased with a normal bony cavity. Exorbitism demonstrates normal orbital contents in a shallow or abnormal bony cavity. Can be both syndromic as well as non-syndromic. Syndromic, for example, in this child showing exorbitism in a case of craniosynostosis. Dystopia. Dystopia denotes a dislocation of eye globe in coronal plane. Pseudoproptosis. Pseudoproptosis are the conditions which mimic proptosis without evidence of actual forward protrusion of the eyeball. Examples being unilateral high myopia, unilateral eyelid retraction, contralateral enophthalmos, or unilateral ptosis. Etiological classification of proptosis can be divided into these 5 classes. Infectious lesions, for example, orbital cellulitis, parasitic infections as cysticercosis or hydatid cyst or subperiosteal abscess. Inflammatory disorders, non-specific orbital inflammatory disorders or thyroid-related orbitopathies or granulomatous inflammations, for example, orbital apex syndrome. Vascular tumors, capillary hemangioma of infancy, cavernous hemangiomas in adults, lymphangiomas or arteriovenous malformations. Next is neoplastic lesions. They include both benign as well as malignant tumors. Benign tumors as dermoid cyst, pleomorphic adenomas, optic nerve gliomas, mucoceles of adjacent sinuses, or malignant tumors, for example, rhabdomyosarcoma or lymphoproliferative disorders like lymphoma. Miscellaneous are conditions like trauma or extension from intracranial or paranasal sinuses or foreign body granulomas. Proptosis can also be classified into different types depending upon these few variables. Duration, acute proptosis, which develops within hours, subacute, which develops in between 1 to 4 weeks, intermittent proptosis, which shows waxing and waning in its course, or chronic proptosis, which presents for more than 4 weeks. Progression can be gradually progressive, static as the patient observes, or waxing and waning. Proptosis can be axial, mostly because of the intraconal lesions, as well as abaxial or eccentric because of extraconal lesions. The origin of orbital pathology can be primary orbital. It can extend from the eye globe, for example, from ocular malignancies extending into the orbit, can extend from surrounding paranasal sinuses, can extend from the intracranial cavity, or can metastasize from a distant systemic site. A meticulous evaluation, including the ocular systemic examination and relevant investigations, can help you in coming to a differential diagnosis for a case of proptosis. Here is an algorithm which can be followed. Histopathological confirmation following any surgical intervention is necessary for a majority of diseases, which decides the need for adjuvant treatment. Going in depth of evaluation, you start with asking the patients regarding the chief complaints about pain, the orbital mass or swelling, watering and discharge, or change in his visual acuity, as well as presence of double vision. The duration of and course of disease is then discussed with the patient. Regarding progression, important points to be considered for evaluation of proptosis is any presence of diurnal variation, that is difference in amount of proptosis noticed by the patient in different time of the day, or postural variation, especially when the patient gets up in the morning, or if the patient is used to doing activities bending down, if there are any changes in the amount of proptosis has to be asked, followed by any associated complaints noticed by the patient. Personal history of addictions, smoking habits, and sleep habits have to be asked, followed by systemic history of any prior medical conditions, prior treatment history, ocular as well as systemic has to be asked. Regarding the duration, this is a distribution of the presentation of diseases between hours, days, weeks, for months, and years. Here we get a common picture of trauma as well as infections presenting more acute or subacute presentation, while neoplastic, inflammatory, and degenerative diseases can present in a subacute or chronic manner. Now, before going on to examination, let's learn what kind of changes the orbital masses can cause into the orbit. So, because of the inflammatory effect produced due to infectious or non-infectious agents, patient may experience pain, redness, swelling in the periocular area, heat, or loss of function of that particular area. The mass effect generally happens because of the displacement with or without involvement of sensory or neuromuscular structures present in the orbit. The effect will also give you an idea about location of the disease. Next is the vascular change. You may notice superficial venous dilatations, visible or palpable pulsations, expansion on straining, or signs suggestive of hemorrhage as, for example, color change. Followed by infiltrative change. Infiltration is visible because of tissue destruction, signs of entrapment of a neurovascular bundle or both of these, or effect of ocular movements or neurosensory function. Keeping these generalized effects in mind when we go forward and go to ocular examination. Ocular examination starts with recording visual acuity, uncorrected visual acuity, as well as best corrected visual acuity. Check for recent change in refraction, which will sometimes point towards a recent onset hypermetropia because of foveal elevation of a mass effect into the retroorbital compartment. Color vision examination is then carried out. Defective color vision will point towards a compromised optic nerve function. Documentation of intraocular pressure is important. Heading on to external examination, you do examine the head posture of the patient, followed by facial symmetry and eye alignment by cover and uncover tests. Documentation of extraocular movements in all 9 gazes help us differentiate between different pathologies. Eyelid and addexa has to be examined. The next, For example, in this particular picture, this is a child showing neurofibromatosis, showing a swelling in his temporal as well as upper eyelid area. The second child shows larger plexiform neurofibroma involving his upper as well as lower lid.
Yellowish discoloration of the eyelid along with proptosis in this patient can be a sign of orbital xanthogranuloma.
Going on to anterior segment, the ocular surface has to be examined. Clues like dilated episcleral veins as seen in this particular picture in a patient having increased episcleral venous pressure secondary to a dilatation of superior ophthalmic vein can be a good diagnostic clue. A salmon-colored patch on the conjunctiva is a sign of conjunctival lymphoma, which can also be examined in a detailed examination of conjunctiva. Slit lamp examination of iris can be done. Findings such as Lisch nodules in the case of a neurofibromatosis can be delineated after a thorough examination. Examination of pupil for its size and reaction to light and presence of relative afferent pupillary defect has to be tested. To complete dilated posterior segment examination is important, which can give you clues like optociliary shunt in a case of optic nerve meningiomas, choroidal folds in case of a retrobulbar mass pressing onto the globe or abutting the globe, papilledema in case of increased intracranial tension. Signs of choroidal rupture can be visible in examining a case of trauma. To the examination of proptosis or the orbital mass, the inspection has to be carried out in primary gaze as well as worm's view and Nabzinger's or bird's view as demonstrated over here. On inspection, the type of proptosis can be classified axial in case the eyeball has moved in anterior-posterior direction, or abaxial if in case of extracorneal lesions compressing the eyeball, pushing it into one of the quadrants. Visible color change has to be perceived. Visible surface changes, for example, induration, swelling, and signs of inflammation as in this picture, followed by yellowish discoloration of the eyelid skin can be noted as in this picture. Visible pulsations, if any, have to be noted. For example, this is the child presenting with pulsatile proptosis because of sphenoid wing dysplasia in a case of neurofibromatosis. Moving on to palpation. Palpation gives us a good idea about the orbital mass under examination. You can examine its size, shape, surface, margins, and consistency, which can help you classify the orbital mass into various categories. The temperature of the mass, and presence of tenderness, reducibility, as well as compressibility. Fixity of the mass to the surrounding tissue, as well as overlying skin and underlying bone has to be checked. Resistance to retropulsion has to be checked, which tells us about the consistency of probable orbital mass. Change in the amount of proptosis has to be noted on Valsalva maneuver, which increases the intrathoracic pressure, in turn increases the proptosis in case of some of the vascular diseases. So on bending down or postural variation like this can be seen in the case of orbital varix. This was a female which presented with enophthalmos on primary examination as visible in the first picture over here. After bending down for 2 minutes, she showed increase in proptosis of her left eye, the characteristics of orbital varix. Ancillary testing, for example, for corneal sensations, supraorbital and infraorbital hypoanesthesia has to be checked to see the involvement of peripheral nerves. Palpable thrill can be noticed in case of AV malformations or carotidocavernous fistula. Any adjuvant anomalies of the bony orbital rim as well as presence of periocular swelling has to be noted. Next, moving on to the regional lymphadenopathy, the preauricular nodes, submandibular node and supraclavicular nodes have to be checked in case of a probable malignancy. On auscultation, bruit can be felt for cases presenting to us with carotidocavernous fistula or AV malformations. Moving on to measurement of proptosis, The commonly used instruments are Lordy's exophthalmometer, which is nothing but a single planar instrument which can be rested onto the lateral orbital rim, and the distance from the lateral orbital rim to the anterior surface of cornea can be checked. Another most commonly used exophthalmometer is the Hertel's exophthalmometer, which gives us a fair idea about distance between the lateral orbital rim and the anterior corneal surface. Nobel's exophthalmometer, for when the lateral orbital rim is abnormal or discontinuous. So this is how you check exophthalmometry with Hertel's exophthalmometer. Hertel's exophthalmometry is useful for primary diagnosis of proptosis as well as monitoring the disease. You can also measure proptosis with the help of Hilal and Trockel method on a CT scan, where a line is drawn joining the two lateral orbital tubercles. A perpendicular is drawn from the anterior corneal surface. Asymmetry more than 2 mm for unilateral proptosis and distance of more than 21 mm for bilateral proptosis can be taken as diagnosis of proptosis. Heading on to measurement of dystopia, as we had discussed prior, dystopia can coexist along with proptosis. So horizontal distance from midline of bridge of nose to the nasal limbus can be taken and compared bilaterally to measure for the horizontal dystopia, as in this picture. Vertical dystopia is measured by a superior or inferior deviation of central corneal reflex of the affected eye from horizontal line passing to the center of normal eye. This is then followed by systemic examination, which can give us important clues. For example, multiple cafe au lait spots, the umbilical hernia in case of a neurofibromatosis in this child. After a thorough history taking and clinical examination, once a list of provisional diagnosis is ready in your mind, you can go ahead and advise relevant imaging for the patient. Ultrasound B scan can be used in cases like cysticercosis, where you can see a live scolex into the extraocular muscles. X-ray can help delineate any foreign bodies into the orbit or early cases of fractures. Computed tomography, magnetic resonance imaging, magnetic resonance angiogram or venography can be advised when indicated. The description of CT and MRI scans will be a topic in itself. However, this is just to show presentative slides. The first picture shows a axial CT scan of a patient with thyroid eye disease showing straightening of optic nerve, thinning of extraocular muscles, bilateral proptosis and increased retrobulbar fat volume. The second scan is an axial scan of a patient having a retrobulbar mass, shows a well-defined homogeneous mass, which can be presence of a cavernous hemangioma retrobulbar. This is a coronal section showing a teardrop sign because of the inferior orbital wall fracture following prolapse of intraorbital content into the maxillary sinus. Over here is an MRI image showing presence of a cystic mass into the superior quadrant. Here is a list of commonly found intraconal as well as extraconal tumors. So with the guidelines provided, we do hope that evaluation of proptosis would be a little bit easier for all the PG students. Thank you for patient listening.